Hello everyone. Today we are diving into one of the most pivotal power plays in ancient Chinese history. The untold story of how a young humiliated Qin ruler named Duke Xiao turned a backward, neglected border state into the unstoppable war machine that would one day unify all of China. This is not just a story of reform. It is a tale of raw political will, a ruthless battle against entrenched privilege, and the single most important partnership that reshaped the fate of East Asia. In the brutal chaos of the Warring States period, when 7 kingdoms slaughtered each other for land and supremacy, Qin was a laughingstock. Crumbling from decades of weak leadership, stripped of vital Western territories, and excluded from every major alliance of the Central States, Qin was seen as a semi-barbarian backwater, unworthy of respect or fear. When Duke Xiao ascended the throne in 361 BC, at just 21 years old, he carried a wound. No battlefield injury could match the shame of being scorned by every other noble house in China. His famous proclamation, "The Lord's scorn, Qin, no shame is greater," was not a complaint. It was a declaration of war against weakness, stagnation, and the old order that had left his people in ruin. What followed would be the most daring, systematic, and brutally effective state-building project the ancient world had ever seen, and it would never have happened without Duke Xiao's unshakable life or death support for a controversial foreign reformer named Shang Yang. Let us set the stage for the desperation that drove Duke Xiao's revolution. Qin's territory was small, its agriculture primitive, its army a ragtag force of feudal levies, loyal to local aristocrats rather than the throne. The old nobility held all real power. They owned vast estates, commanded private armies, passed titles to their sons without earning them, and blocked any change that threatened their wealth and status. For generations, Qin's rulers had tried and failed to break this stranglehold. The nobles simply ignored royal decrees, hoarded grain, and let the state rot while they lived in luxury. Duke Xiao saw clearly that Qin would be conquered and erased within a generation unless he burned the old system to the ground. But he could not do it alone. He needed a mind as ruthless, strategic, and uncompromising as his own, a man unshackled by Qin's old elite, a man who cared only for results, not tradition. That man was Shang Yang, a minor noble from the state of Wei, a student of legalist thought, who carried with him Li Kuei's canon of laws, the blueprint for total state control. Shang Yang had been ignored and dismissed in Wei. Its court saw his radical ideas as dangerous and unrefined. But in Duke Xiao he found a ruler ready to risk everything for power. Their first meetings were a test of wills. Shang Yang tested Duke Xiao's commitment by first speaking of ancient kingly ways and soft moral rule ideas that left the young duke bored and half asleep. Only when Shang Yang revealed his true vision, rule by law, merit above birth, total national mobilization for war and agriculture, did Duke Xiao lean forward captivated. For days they spoke without rest, mapping out a complete overhaul of Qin's society, economy, and military. This was no gentle tweak. It was a complete dismantling of feudalism. But before any law could be written, Duke Xiao had to face the firestorm from his own nobility. The old aristocrats, led by Ganlong and Du Ji, launched a furious assault, screaming that to follow the old ways is without fault. To uphold ritual is without error. They argued that change would destroy Qin's identity, that the people could not be trusted with new rules, that the nobility's birthright was sacred. Shang Yang destroyed their arguments with cold logic. Governance does not follow one path. If it benefits the state, we do not imitate antiquity. Duke Xiao did not just listen, he endorsed Shang Yang, completely silencing the nobles with a single unchallengeable order. The reforms would proceed, and no one would stand in the way. This was the moment that made Qin's rise inevitable, a ruler willing to betray his own class to save his state. Duke Xiao's first critical move was to give Shang Yang absolute, unfiltered authority to enforce the new laws. In 356 BCE, he appointed Shang Yang as Zuo Shuzhang, a high ministerial rank that put him above nearly all Qin nobles, answerable only to the duke himself. To convince the skeptical Qin people that the new laws were not empty words, Shang Yang staged the famous standing wood experiment. He placed a wooden pole at the south gate of the capital and offered 50 pieces of gold to anyone who could carry it to the north gate. The crowd laughed in disbelief. Such an easy task for such a huge reward. When one man finally stepped forward and did as ordered, Shang Yang paid him every coin on the spot. The message was crystal clear: the state keeps its word, and these laws are real. With trust established, the first wave of reforms crashed over Qin, every detail personally approved and defended by Duke Xiao. The laws were harsh, precise, and all-encompassing. The population was organized into groups of 5 and 10 families, bound by collective responsibility. One family's crime meant punishment for all, unless they reported the offense first. This mutual accountability system turned every citizen into a watchdog for the state, eliminating secret dissent and banditry overnight. Private fighting, once a common way for nobles to settle scores, was punished by death. Violence would only be directed at Qin's enemies, not its own people. The most explosive reform was the 20-rank military merit system, a dagger aimed straight at the heart of the nobility's power. Under Duke Xiao's order, noble birth no longer granted status, land, or titles. Instead, every man in Qin, farmer, slave commoner, could earn rank, land houses, and servants by cutting off enemy heads on the battlefield. One enemy head equaled 1 rank. Higher ranks brought tax exemptions, larger estates, and official positions. Nobles who did not fight lost their privileges. Their hereditary titles were stripped away if they could not prove battlefield courage. This single policy transformed Qin's army from a feudal levy into a professional, bloodthirsty fighting force, where every soldier fought for his own future. Duke Xiao did not flinch at the nobles' screams of outrage. He knew this was the only way to create an army loyal to the state, not to local lords. To fuel this war machine, he backed Shang Yang's radical agricultural reforms. Land was opened up to common farmers, wasteland was distributed for cultivation, and families were rewarded for producing grain and cloth. Merchants were taxed heavily to keep labor and wealth focused on farming, the foundation of state survival. Families with more than one adult son were forced to split up, doubling the number of tax-paying productive households, and ending Qin's old, primitive, extended family customs borrowed from nomadic tribes. By 350 BCE, the first reforms had already turned Qin's fortunes around. The state was richer, more orderly, and more militarily capable than ever before. Duke Xiao, now confident enough to strike at the core of feudal power, approved the second, even more radical phase of reforms, and moved the capital to Xianyang, a blank slate, free of the old nobility's influence. This second wave destroyed the ancient well-field system, the economic backbone of feudalism, by recognizing private land ownership and allowing free trade in land. Farmers now owned their land, paid taxes directly to the state, and had every incentive to work harder and produce more. The nobility lost their control over land, and peasants their wealth and power, draining away by the day. Duke Xiao also imposed county-level administration across Qin 31 counties, each run by officials, appointed and dismissed only by the duke, no exceptions. This was the birth of centralized governance in China, a system that would become the model for every imperial dynasty for the next 2,000 years. Weights, measures, and currency were standardized, eliminating corruption and making tax collection and trade efficient and uniform. Every tool, every transaction, every law served the power of the central state. The greatest test of Duke Xiao's loyalty to Shang Yang and to the reforms came when the crown prince, the future king Huang, broke the new laws. The nobles rejoiced certain Shang Yang would back down, that even the reformer dared not punish the heir to the throne. But Duke Xiao refused to compromise. He ruled that the prince as a minor could not be punished directly, but his tutors, Prince Qian, a powerful noble, and the scholar Gong Sunjia would be held responsible. Prince Qian was sentenced to facial branding. Later, when he offended again, his nose was cut off. This punishment sent a shock wave through Qin. No one, not even the royal family, is above the law. The nobility was broken. They could not challenge a ruler who punished his own son as mentors to uphold the law. From that moment, the reforms were unbreakable. Under Duke Xiao's 23-year reign, Qin went from a forgotten border state to the most powerful kingdom in China. It reclaimed the vital Hexi territories from Wei, defeated Han in battle, and was no longer an outcast, but a dominant force in warring states politics. The state was wealthy, its people disciplined, its army feared across the land. Every success belonged to the partnership between Duke Xiao and Shang Yang, a ruler who provided the shield of absolute power, and a reformer who forged the sword of systematic change. Critics often credit Shang Yang alone for Qin's rise, but this is a fatal misunderstanding. Without Duke Xiao, Shang Yang would have been just another failed reformer, executed or exiled by angry nobles. It was Duke Xiao's political courage, his willingness to alienate his own class, his refusal to retreat, even when faced with assassination plots and court intrigue, that made the reforms possible. He did not seek glory for himself. He sought survival and supremacy for Qin. When Duke Xiao died in 338 BC, the old nobles finally took their revenge, framing Shang Yang for treason and killing him in a brutal manner. But in the most important victory for Duke Xiao's legacy, the new king did not reverse the reforms. He knew they were the source of Qin's power, and he kept every law, every system, every structure Duke Xiao and Shang Yang had built. Those reforms carried Qin straight through to the reign of Qin Shi Huang, who completed the conquest of all warring states and founded the first unified Chinese empire in 221 BCE. What Duke Xiao created was more than a strong state. He created a blueprint for centralized law-based governance that defined Chinese civilization for millennia. He proved that a single ruler with unshakable will, paired with a clear, ruthless strategy, could rewrite the rules of history. In an age of chaos and cruelty, he chose radical change over slow death, merit over privilege, and national power over aristocratic comfort. His reign is proof that behind every great revolution there is not just a thinker with a plan, but a leader brave enough to bet everything on that plan. The rise of Qin was not an accident. It was a choice made by a young, shamed duke who refused to let his people perish and who built an empire that would echo through time. If you enjoyed this journey into ancient China, hit like, drop a comment, and subscribe for more epic history. See you next time.